Hello. So, last week I was putting together the last of my Stormcast Eternals, and I believe I mentioned that I had a few Space Marines, and like the Stormcast, I could finish them off as a collection of things and be done with them. The Space Marines are similar, I guess. I've got maybe a dozen of those kicking about. I feel like I've got some old Tactical Marines in a box somewhere. But again, whether they're here or whether they're at my parents', I'm not 100% certain. Also, I've got a cup of tea because it's morning, and so therefore I still need waking up. So I will be taking sips from that throughout this on-live stream. I am partway through painting my Stern Guard veteran for the mini of the month. He's very patchwork, as you can see. I think I've got to about 40 different colours. The lower half of his right leg is the only thing that's complete on this. He was supposed to be due in on Saturday, but I've been very busy. I'm at uni. It's busy times, so he's probably not going to be done, but I will get him painted up as part of this. Get all of my Space Marines done. With that in mind, I have gathered up all the Space Marines that I knew whereabouts they were in my room. They're all to hand right now. They're on the desk in front of me. So I will set about building them up on this modelling video. I've got about eight Space Marines. They are all still in boxes, as I said before. So I will be sticking and gluing them together with the intention of getting them painted up and all done. If I had the time, and I wasn't going to do something silly like paint them all patchwork colours, possibly by the end of the year I could have got it done. But then I've got the Stormcast to do as well. So anyway, I'm not going to get them painted if I don't get them built. So that's what I'm going to start with, is building them. Which I'm going to start with the very simplest of builds. And I'm taking this seriously. He will get sprayed and painted. It's the little chunky Marine that came in the blind bags. I picked one of those up, and I got the Blood Angel. Though whether or not he'll stay as a Blood Angel, I'm not sure. But my intention is, I can't even get him open. My intention is to stick him on an actual base and texture it rather than the huge base that he comes with. Stick him on a 32. Little guy. Yeah, treat him simply. He's got a little bit of a mould line. Let's give that a bit of a polish up. Some of them are in no doubt going to be experiments in painting. like Patchwork Marine, or somewhere around here is my previous mini of the month that I did as a split colour scheme with very bright colours. It was pink and kind of fiery orange red. But I might have a go at recreating some actual colour schemes based on known Space Marine legions. I've always been a fan of the Space Wolves. Again, that very first White Dwarf that I picked up, there was a rundown of a Space Marine list, kind of like a Codex approved Space Marine list for the Bloodhead Space Wolves. This had been 3rd edition, and it included stat lines, but more importantly for me as a child, it included pictures of the models. So I spent a long time staring at Ragnar Blackmane, who at that point would have been blonde, and Ulrich the Slayer, Rune Priests, things like that. And I have owned Logan Grimnar, though that model's long gone. So I could paint some of these up as Space Wolves. In fact, in the pile there is Fafnir Rand, one of the Horus Heresy releases from a couple of years ago. And sorry, I just got distracted and I thought I could hear the phone going somewhere. Yeah, Fafnir Rand, who I believe I was not alone in thinking when he came out that he definitely should have been a Space Wolf. But obviously everyone tries to convince me when I talk to them in a Games Workshop store that he is actually an Imperial Fist, including the store manager, who just so happens to be an Imperial Fist player himself. So I'm not sure how much truth I'm taking in that. Do you know, funnily enough, they are the same size. That's kind of funky. If they were affordable to do as an infantry unit, that would be kind of fun. An entire army of little chibi Space Marines. Yeah. Right, sticking one is 32, and then I can say I've built one model already. I'm quite interested in some of the Space Marine chapters from the Badab War as well. And my friend who's in the room, he's the one that went and knocked on the door of Barehead or Helmeted Head. He's currently painting up a salamander for the same competition that I was supposed to enter, but he's doing it in the previous Rogue Trader colour schemes. So exploring Rogue Trader colour schemes, that could be another option. So this is kind of the level of uncertainty I have, is paint them up just for fun in whatever colour scheme I fancy. Do something a bit daft, like multicoloured marine. I've had this idea kicking around since getting the Mini of the Month of doing an Angels of Death model where he's half Blood Angel, half Dark Angel. So either a split down the middle and then alternate the patches so that the Dark Angel's patches on the red side and the Blood Angel's patches on the green side, or to, on the individual armor panels, transition up from green into red. It's just something that I'm kicking about with in my head. I'm not quite sure whether I'll do it or not. Obviously, there's also a big movement of people that do things like the Dornian heresy, so doing good guy chaos forces or bad guy imperial forces, flipping them and looking at what those colour schemes would look like. Maybe, I don't know. I not being an army painter, it doesn't really matter. I can do obviously one-off patchwork marines, but then I do fall down rabbit holes of, oh, that's an interesting scheme, I wonder if I can do an interpretation of that. Maybe not even necessarily follow the colour scheme, like my friend is currently following the salamanders a little bit more to the letter in the Road Trader scheme. Oh my word, that's a lot of parts. Right. We will see, get them built. So starting on actual building, I'm going to build Fafnir Rand, the Space Wolf that ever Imperial Fists had. He's pretty cool. My friend did build him up and paint them. We went down, was it Black Library Weekender? Was that when they were released? My friend built his up and painted his up the same week that they came out, I believe. I'm just getting around to mine now. Was it 2 years ago they came out? The problem is, they're really cool models. I did do a video on a different channel talking about just how many special edition models seem to be proliferating these days. These were included in that conversation, but these were slightly cool. I mean, there was nothing particularly different. So essentially the cut and thrust of my argument is Imperial Space Marine, recreation of the, Road Trader Metal Boy, which I've just read says original Space Marine not included in brackets, just in case. That is a one-off special edition miniature. They did the Core Knight Lord for Warhammer Plus a year or so ago. That is a special edition miniature. These models did feel like they were just character models that you could have seen in the line. Marco Colombo, he was a special edition model, just Empire Captain. Felt like he could have been part of the range anyway. But anyway, I did think these were cool, even if I don't think they're cool enough to be special edition miniatures. I do think they're pretty cool as one-off pieces for me to pick up with no real intention of taking them any further than just having them as solo models. It is a question or a statement that many people believe, anecdotally, mind you. This is anecdotal entirely. What the actual, hundreds of thousands of people that are actually into Warhammer really do and think, I don't know. But there was always a stereotype that everyone's first army was Space Marines, and everyone's first Space Marine army was Ultramarines, because they were their cover boys. They're still the poster boys, right? Everyone knows Ultramarines because they're so bland and so rubbish, which is another thing that I don't actually subscribe to. I think, they have their own lore and their own interests. And people do some great things with entirely tyrannic war, veteran-themed armies, don't they? Fighting the Tyrannid Menace. And my friend, who I keep referring to, has got currently 3 Space Marine armies, so he's pretty invested in them, although he plays his Imperial Guard. That's what he has a preference for. I never have collected up a Space Marine army. And now that they've gotten Primaris, I never will. Much more of a preference for what I call just, Marines, but what in the lore now I think are called Firstborn. My first White Dwarf had me down the path of Chaos Space Marines, and I think the idea behind the Imperium versus the idea of, semi-free will, ideologically, was more of a Chaos Space Marine, although obviously nowadays in the 41st millennium, as opposed to the idea of rebellion when it first popped its head, they commit terrible acts of atrocities. So I'm not down for that, but I am down for the idea of screw the Emperor of Man. That guy is an asshole. Which he's very much like, this is something I've always thought, though I'm sure plenty of people have, so I can't claim it as an original thought. Like Iluvatar from Lord of the Rings. He set up Melkor, the big bad, to fail, basically, in Lord of the Rings. And then said, but everything you've done, Melkor, can't you see? It's all part of my creation anyway. Even when you thought you were acting out of free will, you were creating in my world, and so everything you've done counts for nothing. Without me, I'm so much better. I don't know if you can hear that, but someone's singing down a corridor somewhere. That should add an interesting audio artifact to this video stream. So I can't even say that I've particularly come close to collecting a Space Marine force. Although it might be fun to collect up an actual army and paint them all up as individuals, but the base is tying them together. Maybe shoulder pad markings, so that you can tell that they are part of squads, perhaps. Yeah. I don't know. I have picked up the occasional Space Marine vehicle, like a land speeder, because they're pretty cool. But I've put chaos markings on it, even though there was never any rules for it, because chaos was just cooler. Unapologetic bad guys. There's probably some sort of power fantasy in there for me as a child. But I believe I mentioned last time, or I know I mentioned last time, that me and my friend have a slow burn 4th ed project going, which he's going a lot faster than I am. Apologies. I do still have those models on the desk that are towards that sort of project, and I have some chaos bits bobbing around that are for that project. But the Beastmen can go in that as well, can't they? Because at that point in time, they weren't individuals. When you get to 6th, the Chaos Force is split into Mortal and Beasts, and you can still mix them. And then when you get to 7th, they are separate lists. So I've probably got a decent chunk of models that could go towards a Chaos Force. Although in 4th ed, it's all warbands. So I don't know how well you can mix. I think you could probably have, I'm not remembering the rules exactly, but I feel like you could have 25% allies of non. Right, let's start again. So the way that it works is you have an army general, and depending what he is, depends on what the majority of your army has to be. So Chaos Warrior means most of them have to be mortal. Demons, most of them have to be demons. That carries on through into 6th, but within 4th, you then buy little warbands for each of your heroes. So I can't remember exactly how the points work. I feel like I'm grossly remembering, but maybe it's that. No, it can't be that. I was about to say, maybe it's the amount of points that your hero is. You then buy that amount of troops to go with them. So, like, double. So if he was 300 points, you had 300 points of followers. But that feels wrong. That feels like a different game that I've played. But anyway, they form their own small retinue. So you get a hero, and then you can have some troops and some monsters or something that fall under him. But if your leader is a demon, then the majority of his force has to be demonic. And you can have a few non. That is something. If they are a demon hero, all of their retinue has to be demons. If you're a human hero, all of their retinue has to be humans. So that's the only way to get extra things in. So if you have a primarily demon force, you have to have a human hero in order to have, some human followers. So I have a little bit of Beastman or a little bit of Chaos, but I couldn't do a 50-50 split. I'll have to go back and look at the rules. Anyway, the point being, it's a very slow grow project. Partly because I'm flitting all over the place. I've got these guys on my desk. I've got some trolls that I'm putting together for a Throg which is a later edition, which we're nowhere near, obviously, because we're still in the slow grow fourth. I have some Kislevites, old metal models in a drawer, enough for maybe one unit, so not enough to do an entire army with. I have the Chaos on the go. I picked up 4 Wood Elves with the intention of doing them. And I have a box of entirely metal Chaos, which is separate to the Chaos and the Beastmen that I was just describing. The Chaos and the Beastmen, they're entirely plastic. The idea of being of that was, you know, doing old or a middle hammer Chaos army that was entirely plastic based, and then do a separate Chaos army that was entirely metal based, because metal is mighty. But anyway, Orcs and Goblins, but Goblins just take so long to paint. I might paint a few more Goblins up, because I ended up painting about 50 last year. But paint a few more Goblins up and then build some war machines of some variety. I think that's where my mind currently is at. As I'm going to scratch build all of my catapults. I've got to do 2 different sizes of catapults. There's a small catapult and a large catapult in the rules. And jerry-rig some sort of chariots I reckon I could do as well. I'm not getting very far with this. I'm going to have to speed up a bit. Otherwise, you know, it'll be an hour and I will have built one model. Because, well, I'd love to count sticking Chibi Boy on a base as a model. That's not really counting, does it? Part 5. Hole in his chest. So yes, this is a very long way round of saying Warhammer Fantasy is ongoing as a project with my friend, and at some point I would also like to transition into 3rd edition 40k, because I keep telling him that that is the superior system. Enough of your 10th edition. Why would you want to play 10th? It peaked at 3rd. It does contain the best Chaos Codex, hands down. And that's not even up for debate. It's just better. I also like 3rd because it was a much simpler time. So I know that, you know, advances with models and everything meant things got bigger and bigger and bigger, but I kind of liked it when you just had Necron Destroyers and Necron Warriors and Necron Tomb Lords, Spiders, Monoliths. Now obviously there's so many different types of walking thing that I can't even name them. See, Necrons were always essentially just humans brought back to life, right? And you can have some variants in that, like Destroyers. They are members of the Destroyer cult that have given over their bodies to experimentation, and, you know, so they hover about and fly. But obviously, as time's gone on, the number of creations has got more and more and more varied. It's fine for some people. I remember a simpler time, is all I'm saying. I also have a preference for the old plastic tubed, green plastic tubed neck-on boys. I know some people really hate the green gorse, slightly translucent era, but I'm a big fan. I might I was about to stick him on his base, but I might give him a bit of cork, because otherwise he's going to be a bit boring. This guy's base, which you can't see because I'm in a very dark room, there's just bits of sprue rubble that I cut up, so I might do something like that perhaps. Obviously texture paint, I have a little bit of that around, could possibly do that, or could just sand it, I suppose. I could do the sprue rubble and paint them up the same way as the stern guard, perhaps. Anyway, yeah, the third edition plan for 40k in my head can't really start until 4th is on the way significantly. That we're at a stage where we can comfortably have a few games every so often that don't repeat. These go over the top or they do go under? I think they go under. So that means speeding up and painting up a usable amount of goblins or whatever. But then, yeah, when there's a couple of things that we can do, and when I say having a few games, I think like having a few games that feel right as well. So, you know, with a bit of terrain, which I've had some ideas about. Black Magic Craft recently did a video where he took the really cheap MDF bird's nest things that you get in the pound shop or in the works or something in the UK you would get, and turning them into fantasy buildings for gaming. They look really good. They're very simple. So, you know, having 2 or 3 buildings and some woods, and then probably heading down to a train shop, which, fortunately for me, Rails of Sheffield is quite close. And getting a green felt mat, so that we can immerse ourselves in the 4th edition gaming project. That might be. I think that's where it has to be before I then go right. Now let's start on a 3rd edition 40k army. Although getting terrain together for that would be a little bit easier because it's just 2 bits of cardboard, put end on, so you can do corner pieces of buildings, right? If anyone remembers how to make wargames terrain, the great tome, which I I think I sold, possibly. Maybe. Way back when. Or maybe my parents sold. I feel like it came back to the UK. Now, at about this point last week, I stopped the stream because I needed to go and ask my friend a question. Oh dear. Okay, that's fine. I think this week I'm just going to keep going until Fafnir Rand is built, which embarrassingly could mean this one video is an hour long. As I said before in a previous video, part 1 or part 2, whichever it was, I am a slow and steady model maker. But I find that sitting and talking to camera really elongates the process of building a lot more than even I'm used to. I used to really hate painting. I might save the explanation as to why for a painting video, if I ever get around to doing those. I mean, this isn't the best lighting for painting in. It has to be nice and bright outside, which it's chucking it down today, so it is not nice and bright. But I have always enjoyed building. I find that bit the sort of relaxing and therapeutic aspect of the hobby. And just switch off and not think about it. I mean, Fafnir Rand that I'm putting together, the same as Seal Guard. I can't remember what his name is. I know it's Steel Guard, but obviously last time I made the joke of... Oh, I didn't make the joke. No, I'm being disingenuous. I misspoke. I called him Seal Guard on camera. I am just building as is from the box, because I worry that in 10 years' time I'll be sad that I don't have a standard version of Steel Guard, or in this case Fafnir Rand. Although I think you'd make quite a chunky Chaos Boy, and that has been my modus operandi up to date, is to take whatever Space Marine I've got and turn him Chaos. I think you'd also make a really cool Space Wolf Boy, but I only have the one, so I'm building it as standard. Not necessarily painting as standard, but building as standard. It's gone cold. I'm cold. Yeah, so I started in... Well, my hobby predates this hobby. the Games Workshop hobby. In that one summer, I don't know if it was the year my brother was born, perhaps. I'd have been 7. 5, 6, 7. I was about 6 or 7. It might have been the year before my brother was born. My Uncle Billy came out to visit us in Germany, and we wandered into the town centre on the weekend, and I feel like the shop was called Vitov's, possibly. And it was a big hobby store. It had toys, Duplo, Brillo, Lego, but it had like an entire basement of model railways, and I think a little section of Warhammer, but I didn't really know what that was at that point, and I don't think I'd been to that section because it didn't mean anything to me. But I seem to think on the first floor, that's where all the model kits were, and he picked up a Spitfire, and we spent the week or so that he was with us, me and him, building the Spitfire, doing it properly as well, you know, putting the parts together and poly cementing the gaps and sanding it down, and that specifically is what got me into model making as a hobby. I know I got my hands on some other model kits that possibly shouldn't have been mine. A half-track King Tiger. I feel like there was a third one. And I played around with those for years, gluing them together, pulling them back apart, gluing them together again, pulling them back apart, doing mud effects on the tracks of the tank. The tracks not actually being assembled, but I was at that point in time. It could well still be the case now. When you got a tank kit from Tamiya or somewhere like that, you were given as part of the kit rubber tank treads, tank tracks. And so yeah, I remember spending a fair bit of time creating mod effects over the top of that, just sort of experimenting. I remember my grandparents at some point. I don't know whether this was before or after I was into wargaming as a hobby. Getting me a T-34, and that got built a little bit, but that was an experiment in motorization. I was working out how to motorize the tracks on a T-34. Military model making was then an easy gateway into wargaming, when I eventually met a person on my street called Richard, who was into Warhammer 40,000. And I couldn't quite grasp some of the concepts he was discussing. So he said like he had some Terminators, and I hadn't watched Terminator at this point, but I was vaguely aware of Arnold Schwarzenegger, and knew he was something to do with the Terminator franchise, I guess. So in my head he just had a bunch of metal Arnold robot skeleton things. But he explained a little bit of the hobby to me, and then I rang my grandparents up. They sent me out my multi-part dwarf kit, and I painted them up, and was into fantasy wargaming for the longest time afterwards. A bit of 40k, bit of fantasy, just model making at that point. Picked some stuff up from Vitovs. We moved to Hameln, and that had an actual wargaming store rather than a hobby, rather than a toy shop that sold a small section of Warhammer. And picking stuff up in the summer when we came back to visit. My wargaming collection of models slowly grew, as well as picking up a few. I remember I think it was Void I picked up in Newcastle, a few Viridians. I think Junkers came later, in a later version of the game. But yeah. Sort of at that time, there was, there seems to be this idea that we're in a renaissance of wargaming now, where there's all these different companies and all these different options. But like I say, back then, I was already picking up other companies' models. But in the mid-90s, no one could really maintain the pace, and so they fell by the wayside. And then we come back around to now, and I believe a version of Void is returning, possibly. Urban War, I think, is on its way back. Okay, so it turns out that I can't do an hour because my camera cut out, which this is Lonely Brick unpolished, and so unless I've broken my promise to myself, you will have seen that just cut out. I was explaining about the idea of us living in a glorious time of miniature wargaming where anyone can get into it and do whatever they want is kind of a fallacy, because you had other gaming options back when I was younger, back in the 90s. And I was explaining that I did back then pick up some Void models, which is now Urban War, was an offshoot of that. I could be wrong, but I feel like Void was the larger scale and Urban War was the more smaller squad-based, you know, it was like skirmish warband, possibly. Yeah, it was. I don't really remember a massive amount of the army ideas, but you had sort of corporate structures in the universe, and you had a couple of different human factions, the Junkers and the Viridians. I think you had space cops as well, and then some sort of alien race and some sort of robot race. It's sci-fi though, so I never really committed to it in the same way as I committed to fantasy games. I picked up a fair bit of Keltos, and then when we moved to Hameln, my fantasy collecting, or my other miniature collecting, really took off, as at that time Confrontation had come out, Rackham miniatures, and so I picked up a bunch of those models, and also Privateer was starting to get going as well, so I picked up the first edition War Machine rulebook and a bunch of models for that. Some Cador I think I did back then. Yeah. Spent a long time playing 40k at that point. But, you know, had mixed forces of Khorne Berserkers from Games Workshop, and then some mutants that were a collection of things from Okay, back once more. Hopefully I will have sliced in that last bit about Void. Anyway, it was good fun. I then went on and explained that when I got to Hameln, my fantasy collection took off, and I think I was explaining that at the point at which my video cut off because it reckoned it had no more storage space in my phone, that I was playing things like the Lost and the Damned army list with some Khorne Berserkers from Games Workshop, and some Rackham models, some Void models, some random minifigs from a basically dive box reduced off license things that they're trying to get rid of. And so yeah, my collecting became very varied from then on out. Yeah, I think I went on a massive tangent from essentially all I was saying is I've never collected a Space Marine Force, but I'm very intrigued by the idea of collecting enough armies for fantasy so that we can have varied game nights. Between us, bit of high elves from him, bit of orcs from me, bit of dwarves from me, bit of orcs from him, and so on and so forth. Obviously Oldwood's coming back and some of those kits are coming back, and I know that he's been looking at Bretonnians, whereas I have a bunch of 5th edition Bretonnian archers, and so therefore would rather theme my attempts at a Bretonnian army to the 5th edition. Well, similar for 3rd edition 40k. I want to do 3rd edition 40k in a manner in which we can again have varied conflicts. So obviously he's got 3 Space Marine armies, we're covered there, right? But 3rd edition is when we saw the Inquisitor game have an influence on the tabletop, and so you got the Demon Hunters Codex and the Witch Hunters Codex, and while each of them had their own sort of themed add-on, so for Demon Hunters it was Grey Knights, and for Witch Hunters it was the Sisters of Battle. I almost said Adeptus Sororitas, but then I remembered, you know, I'm not GW and I don't need to make everything sound weird. I can just call them Sisters of Battle because everyone knows what they are. In the same way as I don't even know what they're called now, but they are the Imperial Guard. Are the Imperial Guard, right? Oh, okay. Also, I didn't carry on building while my phone was sorting itself out. It's had to restart and everything. The joys of filming on a phone. Although my brother did show me once a film called Searching for Sugar Man, which was filmed entirely on an iPhone. So I appreciate that it can be done. The Grey Knights and the Sisters obviously were heavily themed to the Witch Hunters and Demon Hunters Codex, but within the rules there were rules for auxiliary forces, because an Inquisitor can demand whatever resources he wants if it should be necessary. And so you could take attachments from the Imperial Guard Codex or attachments from the Space Marine Codex, as well as your army. And also, you know, your Inquisitor retinue could be allied into other Imperial forces. So you could have an Inquisitor or a force that was themed around an Inquisitor, or you could have a little bit of extra flavour added to your other Imperial force. So I fancy possibly when we get there, which could be, you know, 10 years time, collecting up a small faction of Space Marines, maybe 500 points or something like that, you know, a couple of tactical units and a Rhino, to include them in whatever I do with the Inquisition. I mean, this is all very nebulous. Like I say, we're in the midst of preparing to make 4th edition a more regular thing for us. So the idea of even doing 3rd right now is not going to happen. But, you know, hobby butterfly, I like to think ahead. Way, way, way ahead. if I was to do that, I think it would have to be a slightly smaller chapter, lesser known. I still want an interesting colour scheme. Sorry, Brazen Minotaurs, but just painting them bronze isn't interesting to me. But one slightly more from the archives that I can play around with. Whether I'd do the same for Imperial Guard, I don't know. Although they did have Inquisitorial Stormtroopers as a retinue, so having a few extra bodies in there from the Imperial Guard range kind of makes sense. You could just do them as extensions of that Inquisitorial Stormtroopers force. They're quite a cool colour scheme, if I remember correctly. Go on, stick. Go on, stick. Stick. Why don't you want to stick? I'm having troubles again. Oh dear. Oh no. Oh no. Go on. Shouldn't have to take you apart. So my hands get covered in super glue because he doesn't want to stick. Why don't you want to stick? I say super glue. I use plastic glue. I know some people don't like it. Some people like to use super glue because it means you can pop things off. As a modeler and converter first, I would rather not use super glue because then I would be tempted to pull it apart and use a part. Like his axes are so cool, right? Yeah, but I don't want to use them on something else. I want a plain standard Fafnir Rand. Oh, this is getting messy now. Uh-oh. Oh no. Oh no. Oh dear, oh dear. Yeah, if I use super glue. Oh no, that's terrible. Oh no, apparently that is how it looks. Okay. Weird. Weird. Well, I think Alangla's heading in a different direction then, because that's done weird things to his position. Okay. Stay on. Sure, that's fine. Yeah. 3rd edition. And then when we get to 3rd edition and I get through a Chaos Space Marine force because I have a bunch of Khorne Berserkers, and that old army of mine is long gone and I'm rebuilding a Khorne Berserker force. And I get through whatever else, Tau, Necrons, Orcs, whatever inspires me, or however we decide to divvy it up between us, if we'd even decide to do it. When I get through all that, and I get to Inquisitors, if he wants to do them, I'll probably be very sad that I put together these Space Marines here and now. And I won't necessarily have cool characters that I can just drop into the force because, you know, I've held on to them for so long, and now I can finally use them on the tabletop in 3rd edition, like the, instead 10 years prior now, because of course these are long-term plans. I thought instead, why not stick them all together and just paint them up, because then I've got an entire collection of things done like the Stormcast. Which has left me wondering what to do next. Because obviously these are just non-live building streams, not necessarily painting streams. I can build a lot faster than I can paint, which means once these are done, what to go for next? I'm going to have a box of Roman soldiers that I could do something with, but I kind of want to... I really hate batch painting, but I kind of want to do 80 in one go. I want a century of Roman soldiers. There's something about that idea that resonates. Yeah. The reason I haven't touched them, well, apart from not being a historical wargamer, is I don't quite know how I want to do it. Whether I want to do a recreation of an actual Roman army, partly because, unlike the meme of men always think about the Roman Empire, I was up there recently, Hadrian's Wall specifically I should say, before the tree was cut down at Sycamore Gap, which makes me very upset. I was up at Hadrian's Wall, and I then went and spent some time at some family members, and then while I was there I went to Wall's End and had a look around Segedunnan. So there is a part of me that, for those reasons, the sort of the connection, and also the fact that my granddad always kind of hoped that I would get into historical gaming as opposed to fantasy gaming. I'm tempted to put together the Romans as a purely historical force, not necessarily for gaming again, but do it historically accurate as a not as a remembrance for him, but just as a sort of a nod to, this is something my granddad would have appreciated. I think he was more interested in Napoleonics, perhaps. Not that he was a massive history fan. I spent more time watching CSI and other programs, Hill Street Blues, things like that, than I ever did watching documentaries at his house, my grandma's house. Okay, now I'm confused. Where does his helmet go? Oh, it goes on his shield. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, sort of a nod to, I know this is what you'd have liked to see me doing, Granddad. And here, I'm finally doing it. But I also kind of like the idea of doing some alternate history with them. I am into European comics, and so painting them up in the colours that painting them up in the colours that Asterix and Obelix have them is kind of tempting. But again, I think I might have 40 or 50. I'll count them up later. And I kind of want to do 80 in one block. Have them so they all rank up. Painting my own colours would be fun. I mean, you know, I did read something a long time ago that there is an assumption that every Roman was in red, but you know, there's the possibility that they weren't all in red. That there might have been some variation, especially in shields. I don't know. Doing yellow Romans kind of feels a bit weird. Although yellow as a pigment for dyeing clothes, a lot easier to make, I believe. If you don't know how they did yellow dye, for you know, dyeing yellow clothes, enjoy Googling it. But yes, that isn't something I'm going to think about for a while, not until I get a few more. Should have glued these on first, apparently. That's talking to camera again. Never mind. I'm pleased that you're here. I've got some big kits. Night Titan that is in the middle of being built. I could perhaps build that up on this live stream. Don't know what else. I feel like I've got a Nemesis Dread Knight in parts here as well, but like really bashed up. So that'd be a long term. If it's taken me an hour while talking to put together singular Fafnir Rand and glue this boy onto a base, I think trying to reassemble a Nemesis Dread Knight or doing something different with it, because it might be too bashed, is would probably take a while. Yeah, got a bunch of demons in boxes as well. Build them up, and also I've got a bunch of resin and metal models to put together as well, but I'm not sure that they're really suitable for filming while I do, because resin, obviously you want to be doing that in a very well ventilated area. Otherwise, you know, I've got anyway. The new forged resin is quite nice. Doesn't take much cleaning at all. It's quite crisp, so you don't end up with lots of resin particles floating around in the air. Right, let's do this very quickly because this is getting silly. It's taking far too long. When I told my friend last week that it'd take me an hour to put together Seal Stole, he was quite taken aback. Yeah. And that's because I keep stopping to talk to camera. I think I said last time that I need to get better at talking while doing. I also feel like I noticed last time lots of umming and ahhing. And I want to get better at not doing that, because it's kind of irritating, I'm sure, listening to someone. While to err is human, trying to listen to someone when they're doing it constantly, probably not that enjoyable. That's why the presenters get paid the big bucks. I believe the technique is every time you need to pause, because that's all an is, right? Is giving your brain time to pause. Is instead of ing or ing, is just to stop. That's what I've been trying to do. Is just to stop. It can be a little stop-start, I suppose, but then the process is stop-start anyway, as I am building at the same time, and sometimes I need to pause to think, even if it's a micro thought, as to, is that actually a mod line, or is that a piece of detail that I'm about to scrape off? I think it's a mod line. I think it's a mod line. It's gone. I hope it was a mod line. I'm really self-conscious. Now I've said it out loud, I'm going to be really self-conscious about umming and ahhing. And try very hard not to do it. Yeah. I also have to go a bit faster because I'm supposed to be meeting a friend in 20 minutes-ish. Where does that even go? Oh, it goes there. Fair enough. And it goes there. But it doesn't want to go down. Come on, in you go. In you go. Come on. Try and give it a bit of coaxing. Some positive reinforcement. Come on. In you go. Don't go down. Why not? Oh, there we go. Oh, that just slotted straight into place. Good. Good, 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 good. Right. Quicker, quicker. Helmet. Don't suppose I could put it in place, can I? Oh. Oh, oh. No, I couldn't do that. I did think about giving him a helmeted head in place of his non-helmeted head then for a second, but as I said previously, while I'll regret not having a unique Fafnir Rand in 10 years' time, I will probably regret having a non-standard Fafnir Rand more. This is just based on the fact that obviously now I'm having having those thoughts with regards to models I put together way back when conversion was king. Everything had to be converted. Silo the Slaughterer, if you remember, I mentioned last time, I cut into multiple parts. He came in multiple parts. Legs and arms, metal model, but I went about cutting his tail off and cutting the occasional fist out of place. That doesn't look very natural, if that's where it's supposed to go. Yeah, no, that doesn't look very natural at all. Oh, no, that's definitely not it. How's it supposed to go? This is the problem with wanting to go fast all of a sudden. Is I'm making a mess. So that's like that, that's like that, that's like that. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a close approximation, if not an accurate one. Head. Oh my word. Why is that piece separate? On his head, he has a little tiny bit of tubing that gets stuck to it, which I understand moulding, steel making, moulds. It's a requirement of the process, but I can still get irritated by it, right? That's still allowed? Does that just literally get stuck? This is the problem with modern GW, is they have so many little tabs in everything that makes things possibly stick in place. That every so often it sneaks up on you that there's a piece that doesn't have a tab, so it feels very unnatural. Well, and you're not quite sure if you've ever got it in the right place. Apologies. Right. Get on there. Get on there. I'm just sit and hold it like this. But then I can't sit and hold it like this, because as previously stated, I need to go and meet my friend. And it'd be really awful if this finished without actually being completed, right? Yeah. Can't be late because they've got a meeting afterwards. And I can't text them to say I can't make it, because my phone is currently recording me. Yeah. The things you do for art, shall we say. Which actually, admittedly, kind of a minor thing. I understand. Speed. Don't cut away detail in the pursuit of speed. Yep. No. Yep. As I say, the faster you go, inevitably, the more likely you are to make mistakes. That is a common trope. Common trope? Trope's not the right word. I make mistakes with speaking, it would seem, as well. No, that is a commonly understood phenomenon. If you rush a thing, you tend to mess that thing up. Good Lord, tiny little part. That's going to be horrible to put in place. Thank you very much, Fafnir Rand. What time is it? Oh no! Yeah, I've got time. There we go. That silence was because I was breathing in, which I often find myself doing if there is a tiny fiddly part that I'm holding in my fingers and I'm putting a knife close to my fingers. I think we'll have his head angling another way, right? I mean, we'll not have it angling backwards, that would be silly. But he's kind of looking that way. And the way his body's angled with his axis, I feel like he should be looking that way. So that's what we've done. Where does this shoulder piece go? Is this going to have a little button thing to attach to? Possibly. Okay. So given time constraints, what I will do without your observation, you just have to imagine this until you eventually see the model all painted on Instagram, 2 years time probably, is oh no! I'll sort his base out. In case you're wondering, that oh no is because I've just knocked the shield off of his back. How annoying. Time constraint, like I said. Let us stick that like that. Oh god, how's that supposed to go on? Around the back? I'll be back. I have a pair of pliers somewhere. This tiny little piece needs delicately weaving into place. Put it off that way, I suppose. Ah! This is horrendous. Rough approximation at this point? Maybe? shot and then disappears into his power armor somewhere. Perhaps not. That looks weird. Kind of like he's got an earpiece. Like a security guard or something. Oh, he's gone. Oh, it's gone. Well. Right, I'm putting it down. He will be finished. But I've just lost his little bit of tubing. Grey piece onto a grey carpet. So where on earth it is, I don't know. I'll find it later. Possibly. Thank you for joining. Dear, this is unpolished. I understand that, but I still feel like I should draw the video to a conclusion once it reaches its conclusion. But given that, as I was rushing, I just lost a little tiny piece, and it's quite frustrating. People that model make understand this. I don't quite know how to think right now. Anyway, join me again next time when I take over an hour to put together another model. I have this Gamestay Blood Angels captain from was it 2012 that I might put together. Oh good lord, someone's banging out there. Right, I'll see you later.